Hello, welcome to Hotel Intel Live with one of my favorite hotelier and business person. Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, thanks, Gan. Thanks for having me, hotelintel.co. I'm James Mabey, Managing Director of Standard International for Asia and the Middle East, and Professor of Hospitality Strategy and Development at Hong Kong Polytechnic's School of Hotel and Tourism Management.
It is how we actually met in one of the school event. And I thought he was crazy because you have PhD. Like, who did PhD in hospitality?
No, I think it's, first of all, I think no matter what field you're in, like lifelong learning has to be something that's really important because there's always new things to learn. You can always learn from other people, from things that are going on in the market. Yeah. So having like a actual formal like education, ongoing education is something that's important. Also, I've always used education as a way to have cultural literacy in different countries. So where I've lived, whether that be in the Middle East or whether that be in Thailand or China, I've always tried to study when I'm in those countries something just so that I can understand the culture better. Because that's key to international business. You have to not only be good at business, but you have to have cultural fluency as well in order to be successful.
So, okay, well, we talk about cultural and being in new places. When it comes to branding and strategy, what has to be done in this part of the world with your experience?
Well, I guess you'd have to look back at kind of the overall what you're trying to approach or the strategy, the goals that you're working on. If the idea is building a new brand here, or if the idea is to be exporting a brand from overseas and localizing it here, or tell me more about what your question is. What part of branding?
Like, for example, if a new brand from the Western brands wanted to come and expand in this part of the world, whether or not it will be Asia or Middle East, what needs to be done? What kind of strategy do they need to have? What kind of people do they need to hire?
Right. So that's a key point is, okay, what kind of people, what kind of strategy? And the first thing is strategy generally, because brands don't grow by accident. They really don't. They can grow organically, but it's not an accident. There has to be a thought process. There has to be a strategy. Yeah. The idea, and brands that are more successful at that are definitely brands who have aspects of the brand that can resonate across cultures and across countries and across communities. That is very, very key to any type of brand development or expansion. So the first thing is, I think, understanding how the brand, what the objective is, what type of growth is expected, managing the expectations, and then figuring out how your brand is resonating in different communities. A good brand will have touch points that can resonate across many different communities, many different cultures, different types of people. But every brand is going to be unique to its place of origin and will have to have some localization. There has to be some type of local flavor. There has to be adaptation for it to be successful in a new market. So the key thing, I think, is really understanding where the brand resonates from the original DNA, and then being able to adapt that and localize it to the individual markets that you're growing in. And that is, brands that have not done that well have faced the consequences. It has to be done right. So it's not an accident when brands grow. It's a decision. It's a strategy, and it works best if you have good DNA that already resonates at different levels across countries, across cultures.
But does that mean that brands need to have a sub-brand for a specific region?
No, not at all. But the brands need to be localized. It cannot be a one-size-fits-all.
When you localize a brand, will it lose its, origin? Will it lose its DNA?
Hopefully, it actually is going to make it better. The idea of mixing cultures and making something more diverse should make it better. It should be, you should still have some core aspects of the DNA, but bringing in new thoughts, new cultures, diversity should always make a product better. So it's definitely a balance between the original versus the new, but there has to be localization because it has to resonate deeply enough in the local communities that they feel ownership, they feel pride, they feel like they're a part of what's going on. And if you're able to do that, then you're going to be successful. And if you miss that, you won't. There's definitely many brands around the world, especially in fashion, I would say, there's this idea of you want to be cool, they're aspirational, but the aspirational aspect can only take you so far. At some point, people have to feel like they're part of the brand. They have to feel like now they are in that group. They're part of the family.
How do you do that though? That seems like impossible. It seems very difficult to implement.
Definitely very difficult to implement, but again, it's not an accident. It has to be part of the strategy, part of the thought process.
Okay.
So you have to be able to work with locals. You have to have a really good, deep understanding of the cultures. I think it just starts off with also is a willingness to accept, a willingness to have an open mind. You can't walk into a new place and be like, we're so cool, let's teach you how to be cool. Let me teach you how to be amazing. Let me teach you how to be creative. It doesn't work like that. There is amazing people in, all across the world, from every culture, from every race. And you need to be able to bring the best aspects of those cultures together to create cool new things and, different twists on a successful DNA, a successful brand.
So you mentioned about hiring people. What kind of people are you looking for when you hire your team of, I guess, would be a mixture of cultural background, different beliefs, different lifestyles?
For sure. So what I think generally, so if you're a brand that's trying to expand into new markets, of course you're going to look for people who share a lot of the DNA that is within the existing or original concept, but then who are from that location or very experienced in that location. So that way they'll naturally know because they'll have such good experience with the brand, and within their blood they know the culture, and they'll naturally be able to figure out ways of representing that brand in a way that's appropriate, in a way that will resonate even more deeply with the new area that you're trying to develop in.
So it's important to have a good mixture of local and people from the brands, I guess.
Definitely, and in fact, I mean, it's the local aspect should be the driving force.
Okay.
It goes back to the whole idea of you can't be imposing your ideas onto a local community. It is the creative, the interesting, those local staff or the local human resource that you have that actually push it forward. They should be the driving force of how the localization is happening and what shape that takes.
Oh, that's good to hear. Because
usually, I mean, that's my opinion of it. I've seen it work in that way, and I've seen when people try to do it in other ways that it doesn't work. So,
true. Like you kind of get like resistant from the local staff if you impose, like if you put too much of your opinion and try to force them into your branding framework.
It has to be very collaborative. Like it has to be a team approach, and it has to be about accepting, about keeping an open mind. It has to come from a place where you're open to accepting things. Like for instance, and that's a large part of the Asian culture is about acceptance of things and about listening and about different methods of doing things. So those are some of the key cultural aspects that actually help with brand localization or growth in this part of the world.
And I guess you also have advantage because you speak a bunch of languages. Like you speak Chinese, James speaks Thai. So
I've been out here for a long time, so it's been helpful. And again, things like studying in the different countries that I'm in, help to enable a person to have like different layers of touch points within a community.
You have a degree from Thai University and then one law from Dubai too, right?
Yeah, I did a law degree in Dubai. I did a master's in Thailand, and I did my doctorate in Hong Kong.
So that helps.
SAR.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it does help. And the reason I did that is, one, I do believe in lifelong learning. I do believe in just, like trying to have better understanding and a broader understanding. But a lot of it is the cultural aspect. Working in a country is going to give you a certain amount of exposure to the culture. Yeah. But if you're studying in that culture, it just gives you another perspective as well. Because your classmates are not subordinates and they're not superiors, they're equals.
Right.
So if you're in a class full of 30, 50, 60 local people, then you're going to experience a much different aspect of the culture than if you're working in an environment where the locals are either your superiors or your subordinates. So if you're all equal together and you're all on one team, then it gives you a different aspect. And so you have a chance to learn the language better, to understand the culture better. At least for me, that was the case.
That's good. So apart from that example that you just get, what are the other things that you've seen people make? What kind of mistake that you've seen people make when operating in Asia or Middle East? Because you have experience in both continents. Yeah,
I've seen a lot of mistakes. I think a lot of it comes from a few key points. Okay. One is it's about poor assumptions, like assuming without gathering proper information, without actually being in the market and seeing what people want. So it's assuming that they're going to subscribe to whatever it is that you're presenting because of its success in another area.
Can you give me some examples?
I don't want to give specific examples of companies, but it's definitely happened a lot. Because you have something from a country and say, hey, this is so cool, so that means it's going to be cool everywhere. Not necessarily. Right. It may work, it may not work. So the assumptions are there. Also expectation management. I mean, different growth strategies, what they actually can deliver. One of the things that's very difficult is when you read case studies, at least from my experience, I've read a lot of case studies of different companies and how they've expanded globally. But it's funny because the case studies that I've read where then I actually know the people who were involved, there is a lot of discrepancy. And so I think part of it is some of the case studies can be a bit misleading. And you're reading these thinking, oh, here's what they did and it worked. When in reality, there's a lot of other things that they did that made it work. And so this is going back to expectation management and how something works, just to say company A did this and I read about it in a book and so that's why it's going to be successful. In reality, in some of those cases where I know personally, it's like, no, that's not, there's a lot of other deeper things that were going on at the same time which actually caused them to be successful. So that's weird. So assumptions are one, expectation management is key. The third thing is definitely the open mind, is you've got to be very progressive about incorporating the local culture, incorporating local expertise. Those are going to be key things. If you don't do those, that's what I've seen in my experience where stuff hasn't worked. A lot of it is also assumptions that just in terms of business processes, business management, and people from the West, for instance, they're used to working within a certain context, so they don't even realize that the very context that they're thinking in may not actually work. Whether it be like certain assumptions that they don't even think about consciously anymore about legal structures or institutions in different countries, whether it be governments, whether it be court systems, whether it be religion. So, people that have grown up in maybe one context, they don't even realize that their thoughts and assumptions are at a subconscious level being directed by this context. And so they go into a new country and the very fundamentals of a moral code, of honesty may not apply in that country. The very fabric of, their idea between contracts and a legal system that's going to protect them, it may not function in that way in the country. So there's a lot of almost subconscious things that people take for granted or don't even think about, and then when they actually try to implement their development or their localization, they're not prepared. And first, they don't recognize that that's the problem. They didn't even know. They didn't even know. Or then two, when it's brought up, they have a hard time internalizing that, so they don't accept it. And so they're trying to fix a different symptom rather than actually fix the actual root cause. And so they end up burning a lot of capital, wasting resources, and then in the end, they're not successful. So that's happened a lot that I've seen.
So I think, so what would be the solution for this? Like a good training system?
I think, again, it goes back to the idea of like success is not an accident. Growth is not an accident. It's about, it has to be, there has to be a clear vision, it doesn't always have to be a rigid structure, a rigid process, or a rigid strategy, but there has to be clear focus. There has to be discipline as well. And I mean, that's difficult if you're in an industry that's about creativity, but you have to be able to blend, creativity with, a process. You have to be able to blend discipline with creativity in order to be successful. I think there's too many moving parts, and you're not going to be able to keep track of all the moving parts in real time unless you are proactive about it.
Okay. Because you've been everywhere in the world, you have experience in Asia and Middle East. Have you ever had some sort of like a culture shock when you arrived?
It's funny. I traveled quite a bit since I was young, whether it be Central America or, I was the only time I was actually kind of surprised is when I first started to do work in the Middle East. Okay. And I had thought at that point that I'd kind of like nothing was very different than what I've seen before, even in places in Africa. For whatever reason, I don't know what it is. It felt like, oh, I get this. I've felt something like this before. Or I was expecting something like this. But for whatever the reason, when I first started to work in the Middle East, it was very different. And amazing, like exhilarating. Just the magnitude of especially what His Highness Sheikh Mohammed has done in Dubai, and feeling the sense of urgency and how quickly and how progressive, and it was just, that was an experience that I wasn't quite expecting when I first started doing Middle East work.
Okay, so let's get back into talk a little bit about hotels and hospitality. What do you think is the future of hospitality? We talked about COVID before, and I remember you saying it's bullshit. You didn't say bullshit.
I wouldn't say bullshit. I would say the idea that the idea of the new norm as if there is going to be fundamental change in human nature because of COVID, I do not subscribe to that idea at all. People are social, they will continue to be social. People are also incredibly forgetful, even to their peril. Like, you'll have World War I and then World War II like a few years later. It's like people are sometimes very smart and other times not very smart. So even if they should be wearing masks forever, they will not. As soon as there is not a clear present danger that they're exposed to, they will go back to what they've done for thousands, if not millions of years. Yeah. Travel in packs, travel in herds, want to hang out with friends, want to be seen in public spaces. This is the essence of human nature, which will not change. Travel, seeing new places, some specifics will change. Maybe business travel will be impacted. People are understanding that IT can offer certain solutions that
Zoom
make business more effective. Zoom, I just used for the first time the Google Meets today. It was pretty good.
This guy's so low tech.
Google Meets, they only launched this like a month ago.
No.
Google Meet.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I'm up to speed. I'm the one that's woke here, yeah.
No,
anyway, I used it for the first time today. It was working good. So this type of thing will have long-term impacts. Yeah. But the fundamental need of people to hang out, to have, to form relationships, the social context, that's not going to change. Yeah. The fundamental need for people to explore and see new places, travel, that's not going to change. These things, as soon as people are not faced with like an immediate threat, they will go back to a lot of their patterns. So what will happen in the travel industry, in the hospitality industry, is not that there's going to be fundamental changes which are permanent. Some IT, technology, health, safety within the hotels, those will be changed forever.
Right.
But the other basic human nature aspects will not. So what will also, when you look at it, COVID, as opposed to, I know we had this conversation, the virus is not a terrorist. It's not a secret, organization plotting to take people out. Yeah. It's not. So, the whole thing with terrorism is you're worried maybe on a constant basis. Who's on this airplane? Who is going to show up at this baseball game and try to cause a problem? Yeah. You have no idea. It comes out of nowhere. That's the whole idea of terrorism, is it's terrorizing you because it's a surprise, it's dangerous. Viruses are not like that. They don't randomly explode in a subway in the middle of a city.
Nowhere, yeah.
No, they grow, they start, they propagate, and you can see them coming. There's warning. There was warning about SARS. There was warning about COVID in Wuhan. Yeah. So what will happen is there'll be very permanent changes to processes. So when something comes up on the radar, the reaction will be very different. But those will be things that jump into place. You'll lock down cities immediately. You'll take measures immediately, and then when the threat is gone, it will revert back to similar patterns of behavior in the overall kind of prospect of things.
So you think hospitality will come back? We'll come back. We'll travel together. What about one of those things that I actually don't like is the communal area where you have to sit with stranger, make friends with stranger, because I'm not like that.
Because you're weird.
Well, thank you very much.
No.
Okay, we had this conversation. By the way, James wrote a really good post on his LinkedIn about this topic. Like, it was a hit. Some people like, who is this guy? Because you were came out differently than other people.
Well, I just think you can't fight human nature. And I mean, while there are people maybe that are more social or less social, in the broader spectrum of human nature is people are social. This is why lifestyle hotels have been so successful. It's about more, of course it has. The most successful hotels, I would argue currently, are lifestyle hotels. Things that, and by that I'm talking about the emphasis on public areas and spaces where people can hang out together, where relationships are developed, where experiences and memories are had. I mean, that's why hotels have evolved to the next level. It's not a place that you simply go and sleep and take a shower. Like, it's a place where you have a birthday party. It's a place where you hang out with your friends.
Yeah.
It's a stage. It's a platform where people can come and express themselves and form new relationships. So that's where I think, from the hotel perspective and public spaces, lifestyle, I mean, that's key, and that's not going to go away.
So you still believe in lifestyle segment? Like,
for
if,
sure.
If you like, if there was someone walking into you right now, what kind of hotels should I build that would be lifestyle from you?
No, I mean, it depends. First of all, it's going to depend very much on what this developer wants to do, what their goals are, what resources they have, what market they want to be in. There's different strategies for different type of investments. So it still has to match the type of investment that the person is looking to do. It's not a one-size-fits-all type of a prospect.
Yeah, it's not like, okay, well, I just want to build a hotel, just give me the best choice. What is your best choice?
Yeah, it just depends on where you're at, what the market is. I think a solution, but a lifestyle solution is something that you probably see quite commonly, because it does tie in, deeper aspects of the hospitality competitive landscape that you can draw on in order to be successful and come up with a good business model that can get good returns for investors.
Yeah. Okay. So, okay. Well, one more question from me before other people. How has your PhD helped with your day-to-day work?
Okay, yeah, that's an interesting question. First of all, the process of just doing it in the first place, the cultural literacy that's developed, the idea of continual learning, that's important. But there is a lot, it's about teaching you how to think. Not even necessarily like, okay, the process of writing a dissertation, what did I learn from that? Yes, like I, gathered some interesting, cool new data which showed some interesting, cool new stuff. But the process of having to be critical, of having to be analytical, the process of trying to figure out how theories and how broader concepts can be applied in your daily life or in business is really important, because otherwise you become very tactical, I think, and you become very responsive rather than proactive. If you can have an idea about how things work, about models of how markets work, or about how the industry works that can be applied to different scenarios, then you can be proactive. Otherwise, you're waiting. You're doing experiments only and saying, "Let's try this. Did that work? I don't know."
That's me.
It's not. And there's a lot of value into that iterative process. But if you can supplement that with an underlying approach to learning and thinking, that can be, I think, very helpful.
Okay. So questions.
Okay, we got one from Nickday.
Nickday.
Actually got a few.
Hey, Nick, what's up?
Shifted to processes, and here with F&B concepts.
Yep.
Because some you might have that go for higher end, lower end. What's the process involved to creating a great F&B concept?
Oh, that's a good question. It's a tough question, because it's one where definitely in the hotel space you see really hit and miss. Some hotels have done a great job. Many hotels have totally died, which is why things like Uber Eats and other things are really having a big impact in the hospitality industry, because you have to get it right. I think the key thing is about decision making on a few levels. One is, are you trying to create a new concept which is really unique, which is going to drive which is going to drive demand and induce demand, versus are you trying to create a concept to capture demand that already exists? Obviously, if the approach is you're trying to create, you're going to try to create a concept which is capturing demand that already exists, it will be a less risky play, but maybe you also have less upside. If you are trying to do something that is new and completely different, and you're trying to induce demand, that's going to be a much more risky play, but you have a lot more upside.
True.
So from a hospitality perspective, you better have people that are really experienced at doing that, because there's so many areas that you can make mistakes in. There's so many places that you can go wrong. Again, understanding the local market is key, because even if you're trying to induce new demand, you have to know what the local market has an appetite for, where you can move them. Henry Ford gave a great quote that I think about, or at least I heard it was Henry Ford that said it. But he said, if I were to listen to what the people wanted, I would have got faster horses, instead of course, the Model T car.
Yeah.
But the idea is, there is a balance between understanding, leading the customer to a new area as something that they have an appetite for, versus what is already in the market. But having the right experts, the right people who have experience to creating the concepts and executing the concept, that's going to be kind of the critical points there. I know that's a bit of a vague answer, and Nick already knows this stuff, but thanks for the question.
Another question. If you were, say, a city funky kind of hotel brand, but then, hey, we want to open the Maldives.
Yep.
How would you go about it, about actually making your brand a success?
Sure. Well, I think, again, it goes back to these core aspects of brands that resonate and why they resonate. So in a lot, I know some people think that for different brands, they'll be like, oh, that's a city brand or that's a resort brand. I think that's a question not of the brand, but of execution. The concepts, the values, the principles that resonate with customers who stay in a property in the city, they should be able to still resonate with customers, those same customers when they're on vacation in, on the beach or wherever else. That's not to say that there's specific products which are built very much for a city center location or a product that's built for a beach location. That's exactly true. But there should be, your brand should be able to resonate with people through different contexts, I think. So I think to that question, it's about making sure that you understand where the brand is resonating with the customers and making sure that that's transferred into different contexts. For lifestyle, it's easier, I think, in many respects, because again, it's about the social aspect, it's about the platforms for creating relationships and expressing yourself.
So it can be anywhere.
It can be anywhere. Because again, it's back to the fundamentals of human nature. And I mean, that's really, what you're working with and what you're working for.
Any more questions?
I got a question.
Yeah.
So you're sitting in a global office in the West, in the Western country, Europe, North America, Australia. What do the marketing team need to know when opening in Asia?
Oh, that's a good question. The marketing teams definitely need to think very critically, strategically about how do they, again, keep those core aspects of their brand and how to implant those into the new markets and be inclusive of what local things need to tie into that. So you need to keep a hold of your core values, but make sure that you are figuring out a way to transplant that into the new context to be able to be executed. That's going to be, that's the key thing. You can't have growth or development without growth or development. So it makes no sense to say, let's grow, let's develop, but at the same time, you've got to be inclusive. You have to have that mindset of building and developing and growing. And it's about incorporating new things. It's about being open and being diverse, and it's about sharing.
Yeah, it's very important. So let's get back. I'm sorry, I said I have no more questions, but I have a question. So when you were answering Nick about F&B concept, about unique. See, when it comes to F&B outlets, people are always pride themselves. I'm so unique. I'm different. I'm unique. I'm different. What is unique? What does it mean? What is unique?
What does unique mean? That's a good question, because it kind of goes back to what I was saying before on the strategy, because some things some aspects are not unique, like the idea of like a great burger shop, or great pizza. Like you've got like with our buddy Rohit and the Soho guys doing like really good pizza. It's about good ingredients. It's about, fresh ingredients, good service. It's about doing the simple things in a great way. So it's not like let's reinvent this. So you have a great pizza place that's not unique because of the product. It's about the freshness, the authenticity, the taste, the service, the delivery. And I think just in a world that everything is muddled and confused, if you have that purity, that authenticity, the ability to deliver even something basic, but with good service and that is good quality, it will by itself be unique just because there's so much of a mess out there.
Right.
That's not to say you can't come up with completely new concepts and new ideas, which could be amazing with, whatever the latest bubble tea fashion is. But, that's cool. That's great too. But it doesn't have to be a groundbreaking theory of relativity, new product. It can just be get back to the basics and executing the basics right and executing the basics consistently.
Right. Okay, I guess we are running out of time.
Oh, we're hitting on half an hour.
Okay, so I guess, is there anything else that you want to talk about that I haven't mentioned?
No, I went back, we've talked a little bit about like education and things like that. I would just say, for people, doesn't matter how old you are, how long you've been in the industry, there's always new things to learn, there's always new things to experience.
Even I am learning. I'm
This
studying.
is great. Study, take some courses, there's tons of stuff out there. Learn some new things, mentor people. You learn as much mentoring someone as you do studying.
Right, it's true. Like, I've learned a lot from you. Like, when I was on the phone with you for an hour, and I was like, Jesus, this guy knows too much.
Why won't he shut up? I get that a lot too. But
Like, James, I gotta go. I'm sorry.
I'm done. But it's good. It's learning, constantly learning is something that.
And
I
there's
think
a lot
is
of courses out there that could help. Do you think this education helps hoteliers though? Do they need it?
Totally, because part of the problem is that people think of hospitality as very vocational, which many aspects are. It's it's about the keys to service, which do they need to be taught how to make a bed, how to do stuff? Maybe they do, maybe they don't, I don't know. But the idea of learning, the idea of training your mind to learn, about training your mind to be critical, to be conscious of changes, that is, that's critical. And if I were to choose any industry in the world that is especially needing education, it would be hospitality, because there is this mindset of, I don't need to learn.
You can work from scratch.
I worked my way up from a doorman, and now I don't need. I've seen everything. Experience is the best teacher.
True.
I totally get that, but you need to supplement that by training your brain. Your brain won't just naturally become necessarily. It won't naturally just become a tool that is useful in all situations. You need to train it.
Yeah.
That's my thoughts. I mean, that's what I'd say. Keep learning, keep growing.
Keep learning, keep growing. And James is he's very friendly. I know there's a lot of people say, well, he doesn't look friendly, but he is actually
very friendly.
He's really. If you need advice or mentor, like reach out to him on LinkedIn, everywhere.
LinkedIn, wherever. I answer tons of messages on a frequent basis from lots of people just to share ideas, share thoughts. If I have time, I'm happy to do that.
He's a great teacher. I'm not saying that because he's my friend, but he really is.
Thanks, Cam.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, and we'll hope to see you next time.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hotel Intel.